And we're live. Phil Tarrant, Tom Panos, Real Estate Exposed. Tom, are you okay?
I'm okay. I'm not saying that I'm 12 out of 10, but I've always got the approach, Phil, things could be worse. Good approach to have in life, because it makes you realize, hey, things might not be great, but be grateful for what you've got, because they could be a hell of a lot worse.
Well, one of the things I remember, one of the first Tom Panosisms that I've got locked up deep down inside my brain, which I pull out sometimes, is got to have an attitude of gratitude, Tom.
You do. And I think it's a lot. By the way, Phil, when you're interviewing people, ask people this question before you put them on. Have you been lucky in life? If they turn around and say, yeah, I've been lucky, things have gone my way, they're probably a grateful, happy employee. If they turn around and say, oh, not really, I've had a lot of bad luck. I've had bad luck with employers. I've had bad luck in relationships. Yeah, then you realize, man, we could have a problem here. I'm not saying bad luck doesn't happen, but what I'm saying is sometimes, Phil, people blame every other reason except for themselves.
Sorry, what's that question again? I like that. Look at this Real Estate Exposed, straight into it. You're getting the tidbits of information that you need.
So at an interview, you ask people, have you been lucky?
Like a job interview.
Have you been lucky in life? So interesting question. A lot of corporate companies use that use specialist recruiters. They've worked out that an interviewee that says, yes, I have, is more inclined to be mentally healthy, and a happy employee is normally a successful employee. If they turn around and they actually make it look like life's been really hard and they've had a lot of bad luck, sometimes they themselves are the problem, not the circumstances that they choose or blame for. I know we're generalizing here, but Phil, I'm okay. Are you okay?
Always okay, mate. I've been hugely lucky in life as well.
Yeah, well,
we actually speak about luck a lot, Tom, me and you, when we're sort of just having a chin wag off air, and we can. I quite like our relationship. We get deeply philosophical. We can be really quite sort of, superficial, and it's nice having that diversity in relationships. But we do talk about luck a lot. And by the way, I'm doing a job interview in about 45 minutes, so I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to come back next week and report on my findings of whether or not have you been lucky in life is a good question. But talking about luck in life, and it's half glass full, half glass empty, and we're recording this on an important day, and to have conversations around mental health, Are You Okay Day, which I think is a great initiative to democratize conversations around mental health, particularly with work colleagues. With this a live stream around a professional audience, how you do that in a professional life and how you do that inside of your personal life. Tom, one of the best, I'm a big fan of training and upskilling and all that sort of stuff. And sometimes I do it through absorbing information with people I chat with, yourself included. And sometimes I take on more formal training. And one of the best bit of training that I've done recently is becoming a certified mental health first aider. And I highly recommend all business leaders should go and do that course. And us as an organization here at Momentum, we're pretty well regarded. I think we've got like a gold star around it because we have so many people who have gone through our organization and have done mental health first aid training. And I think it's a very good thing. And days like Are You Okay Day is another great opportunity for us to have a chat about. And I think that could be our catalyst for today's discussion, Tom. This market is doing my head in. I remember back to COVID, and I think I stole this from you as well, but I sort of turned into my own speak that accountants were the doctors and nurses of the professional sector through COVID-19. They were there treating the symptoms of COVID for the SME sector, and you saw the government using the accounting sector as a conduit for steering, for deploying not only the stimulus they put into it, but also being that centerpin or centerpiece for supporting small businesses. And I know a lot of accountants did it tough through that. They're putting everyone else first before themselves. And you put that into the sense of this current market, Tom, and you're on the ground, you're on the front line, you're auctioneering, but you're also working with the best agents across the nation. I reckon a lot of the stress that's coming at buyer level, at the vendor level, is getting sucked down and sucked into the agents themselves. They're now turning into counselors. And what a great way for them to support the profession and the work that they're doing. But no doubt a lot of them probably, there's negative ramifications from that.
there is, Phil. A lot of those are actually to do with money and income. So I just finished off. I'm not going to mention the client; it wouldn't be right. But he's a big CEO of a number of real estate businesses. Not one of the big franchisors, but nevertheless multiple offices. And he said to me, he has people that have not pulled commissions or remunerated for 3 months. And if you could picture that, so just imagine not having actually created any revenue for 3 months. We're talking June, July, August. And that is stressful because, many of these people are in fact the providers at home. So they're going home and they're explaining to their significant other, their partner, their families, that we simply don't have the money that we used to have. Financial problems are one of the major reasons why people end up having separations. So Phil, it is a stressful time. It's also a stressful time, not just because of the reduced income that many people are making in our industry. It's also a stressful time because if you're a real estate agent and you're managing 7 vendors at any one time, so you got 7 vendors on the market, you got 7 people who aren't getting their price. You got 7 people who are getting stressed with the feedback you're giving them. You got 7 people that are taking out their frustration on their asset not getting the price they thought they would have liked, and they're taking that out on the real estate representative that they're working with. So more than ever, on this special day, Are You OK Day, do we want to remind our industry professionals that you've got to learn and have tools to manage stress and anxiety. And the reason I say it, Phil, is that you are going to go from the heights of exhilaration to the depths of depression in one day in our business at the moment, right? And there'll be more darker depression days than exhilaration days. And unfortunately, the real estate industry has not been well equipped to learn how to manage their own cash flows. So if you earned $300,000 last year, there's a very good possibility you started living a life of a $300,000 income. And then all of a sudden you're earning $150. You don't have the capacity to keep doing what you were doing. And that might be the car you're driving. That might be where you're eating. That might be where you're holidaying. That might be even, I have real estate agents I deal with who are telling me they are contemplating of taking their kids out of private schools at the moment, right? So I treat this as I treat it as a serious issue. I've had clients in recent years that have committed suicide, right? People that I was aware. So I do treat it seriously, but I think the positive side of it is that, there are things that agents or anyone can do to help them cope with stress and anxiety. There are tools. And I'm really fascinated about I'd heard about first aid training, and that is, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation stuff, but I hadn't heard about mental health aid first. So what's that all about, Phil?
Mental health first aid training. So it's quite a detailed course. And it covers all of the different and there's some very reputable ones of this. So if you're going to go and do this, make sure you do your research. There's actual institutes around it. And if anyone wants to get in contact with me, I'm happy to let which organization we use for it. We'll put some notes down how to get in touch. But essentially they go through, Tom, the reasons why people might find themselves struggling with their mental health. And it helps you identify where you may be seeing these things, and it gives you the tools to be able to sort of triage what to do about it. And often, depending on what the challenges are, it's just being a conduit of listening and recommendation around perhaps you should see a mental health professional, right? So they don't put it incumbent on you that you've got to try and solve people's problems, because that's not your role as a mental health first aid. It's all about having the awareness to identify when someone may be struggling, looking for the clues, which might not be apparent, but once you start learning about them, they become very, very clear. And you'll think back in time of all the different moments where you probably just realized something wasn't right, but it didn't really click with you, and then what do you actually do about it. And then they'll also teach you other times when you do need to intervene. when you do actually need to stand up and take action when it's deemed to be quite serious. If people are displaying particular behaviours, you need to be able to identify those things and take action. And essentially, it's a duty of care that you have as someone who is a little bit more attuned to it because you've done this course, then you know what to do. And it's absolutely critical. Is Jim Parker here? Recognise your triggers and indicate you are stressed and discipline yourself to pull back and take time before it escalates. And they talk about all these type of things as well. And there's some really easy, simple things that you can undertake if you do find yourself stressed or anxious. It's understanding when you're in that zone or in that moment and what you can actually do immediately to start dissipating that. But importantly, what do you do for others? And there are times when you need to intervene. It's what to say when someone actually says to you, Tom, I'm thinking of killing myself. What do you actually do about that in that moment, there and then? I highly recommend everyone should do it. It's not my position on this podcast to tell you what you do, but I think my recommendation would be go and do this training. If you're a business leader or just anyone working in business, you'll use it yourself in your own personal life. It'll give you tips and tools if you have children on how to potentially navigate or mitigate issues as you see them arising. And like most things in your health, Tom, early intervention is absolutely critical. Not putting your head in the sand and actually taking action around it. One of the issues is with mental health is that there is still this stigma around it not being a health complication, that it is something else. But the course makes it very, very clear that just like any other illness or any other health complication you have, mental health is one of them. It can be treated. There's very different ways to do it. Some of them are very immediate and some of them are quite long-term and require other intervention. But go away and do it and you'll be much better as a part of it. Tom, and I could sort of understand and appreciate the pain that a lot of property professionals are facing right now. To have your income halved very quickly is very hard to shift and change the family budget in order to compensate for it. So again, I would say early acknowledgement and early intervention is absolutely critical to try and alleviate those pains. What other tools, Tom, if you are in that spot and you're a real estate agent, it's probably a bit glib just to say, hey, go away and make more sales, everything will fix itself. I imagine that's a part of it. Your activity levels could probably help compensate for a harder market, but what else can agents do?
Well, and before I answer that question, something that you said about before is on the courses that train you on what to actually do if you have got a colleague or someone that are showing signs. The most famous person on the planet, which is called the suicide preventer, is a gentleman by the name of Don Ritchie. And his nickname is also the Angel of the Gap, the Angel of the Gap. Now, Phil, you probably know the story because I've shared it maybe at a conference or you're aware of it because you've just been exposed to it. But Don Ritchie owned a home opposite the Gap. And for those that are joining that aren't in Sydney, the Gap is the most famous suicide spot in Australia. And by coincidence, his family home had been there for many, many years. And he was in a position where his house was located to be able to get a clear visibility of people contemplating to jump. And what he did over the years is he'd be sitting outside, and he made this a ritual. He'd sit outside his balcony on his porch of his house and make a cup of tea, and he would sit out there and he'd see people coming and staring down, ready to jump. And he would walk over and he'd basically say, hey, is there any help I can give you here today? So they haven't got the exact number, but they say it's in the hundreds, right? Some people claim the magic 500. So hundreds of times he stopped people from jumping. And what was interesting is what they learned from him is when someone is really made up the mind, when they've actually gone to the Gap, right, and they're ready to do it, right, it's not that easy to actually talk them out of committing suicide, right? But what Don Ritchie learned was a very important strategy, and that is not to argue with them, but he would say this: hey, listen, I've got the kettle going. Let's go back and sit down and have a quick chat. And they'd sit down and they'd have a cup of tea. And often, Phil, the conversation would end up where the person would open up and they'd say things along the lines of, listen, you can't change my mind. I've made up my mind. You don't know all my life, but this is the best solution. And they obviously do believe that is the best solution at that time. And what he learned and what the mental health professionals say is the best thing to do of someone in that moment is to actually not disagree with them, but to delay it, to say, hey, I get it. I get it. This is where you're at. I just wouldn't do it today. I just wouldn't do it today. Do it tomorrow. And what you do is you buy time. And you buy time. And the reason why, Phil, is this. There is clear research from survivors of suicide attempts that after it's been done, they have regretted doing it. Right? That's the failed suicide attempts, right? They've regretted it in the process, right? So Don Rich, is an extraordinary guy, and I think he has passed away. But Phil, what are some of the tools that you could use? Number one is, by the way, the best literature I can give anyone to read is a book called Option B. And Option B, I'm just bringing it up here now. Option B was written by the CFO of Facebook. She is still the CFO, I believe. And she's written that book with Adam Grant. Now, do you know Adam Grant at all? He's a very famous podcaster.
I know the name, yeah.
Yeah. So the book was written by the CFO of Facebook called Sheryl Sandberg. And what's happened is she's come home one day, her husband in his mid-20s had a heart attack, died in front of her eyes. They had young kids, and she goes into depression, as wouldn't surprise you, and she talks about the strategies, that she used to help her get out of it. And she talks about the strategies that helped her from other people. And one of them, Phil, is this, and this is important, everyone watching. If you do sense that someone's going through a difficult time, you should never say to them, I know what you're going through, right? Because you disconnect. They actually think you don't know. It's a far better thing, Phil, to say, I don't know what you're going through. But what I can say to you is you can rely on me. And I'm in your corner. And I don't know how I can help you. But what you need to know is that whatever it is, I am there for you. And that is far more effective than saying to people, I know what you're going to go through. And the worst thing that you can say to people, just be positive. I mean, the problem is, how will I be positive? When I'm in a hole, how will I be positive? So I don't think just having simplistic, things like, just keep your chin up and be positive is the answer.
And you know what, you're absolutely echoing what you learn in this course. Don't just sit there and go, oh, look, just toughen up, you'll be all right. Everything's going to be okay. All this stuff is negative. And a lot of the time it's just really, again, it comes to, and this is your role as a, someone who is connected with people's mental health, is just to let someone know. And often, and you're talking about the gentleman up at the Gap stopping his suicides, there needs to be sometimes someone needs a circuit breaker, and that circuit breaker can start a change process. Now, as a mental health first aider, your job is not your responsibility. Your duty of care more so is not to fix someone's challenges. It's to help them with a pathway for them to go about doing that. And often that's going to involve mental health professionals. And most of the time it just starts with your GP. Often the advice is just go and speak to your GP. Let them know how you're feeling. And that is a trained, licensed practitioner who can identify where those issues are, and whether or not you need some more sophisticated support, or you just need some sort of other mechanism to break the chain of where you're in. And mental health problems come in many different facets. Sometimes, from stuff which is led by relationships breakdown or financial breakdowns, all the way through to substance abuse. You learn quite a lot about that, which again has its problems, through to how to deal with people if they're violent and hostile, which can also happen. So I highly encourage for everyone to go and do those things, Tom. But we're all in professional life, and sometimes your days are great. Sometimes a little bit more challenged. However, is that Jim Hall in the background walking through? It's Alex Whitlock. Alex Whitlock, how you going? Alex Whitlock has also done his mental health first aid training. A huge proponent for it inside of this organisation. And also what we do have, Tom, and I recommend other real estate officers and businesses to look at it. We have an EAP, which is something we make available to all our team members, trained psychologists, ready to connect, to take phone calls, whether it's to do with work or otherwise. An EAP program, employee assistance program. Get it involved. One of the best things we do as an organisation and have this, it's detached from us. We don't know what happens. We just provide that mechanism for our team members should they be struggling in any particular way, or they just need someone else to talk to that they don't want to bring in family or friends or colleagues into it, someone that's a bit disconnected from it. But Tom, it's got to be some tough times there.
Just doing Charles Tarby, who's the owner of the whole Century 21 group in Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea, is on YouTube watching our live streams. Good to see Charles.
G'day, Charles. Yeah, he's been out for some time, hasn't he? He's one of the. I remember actually going to a lunch once with Charles there, and he used to have these bets about what's going to happen with real estate market. So I'd be really interested to know what Charles reckons, what's going to happen to this market. And you mentioned, Tom, beforehand, there's going to be tough times for real estate agents if they aren't making the sales of what they used to. I guess it comes to the point, we were talking about this just before we come on air. It's okay to have fun in your job as well, right? And it's not a bad thing to actually put that front and center into your work life. So if you're smiling at work, typically work's a lot better place to be.
Oh, listen, it's so Phil, I actually find this again is evidence-based. Humor, comic relief is a stress reliever. In fact, when you're going through chemo, they're encouraging you to be spending time watching comedy, right? That's what they're telling you, because there's a physiological effect of laughing does to your body. It sort of is a bit of a circuit breaker, Phil. We were talking about it off air. How do you actually have comedy and humor as part of your life? For me, it's absolutely mandatory. I've got a goal, Phil. You know what it is? ELF, effortless, lucrative, and fun. The fun bit comes out of me. I did an auction at lunchtime today. And I had a client that comes along. He owns a property up the road. He looks at this and he says to me, mate, this is derelict. This here, man, this here is like, anyway, he's gone on and on and on and on. Anyway, cut a long story short, I looked at him. I said, you know what? Best possible thing we could do is put a match to this. Let's just burn the bloody thing. And he just broke out laughing, right? And I do that. Listen, I do that all the time, and I do it because, man, if I'm going to have to work, I'm going to make it fun because it's going to help the time pass sooner. But Phil, I just feel like it's a really important subject. So a couple of things that I'd say that I think are really important. And that gentleman, who I think he's from the UK, he's actually quite informative. I forgot what his name is. Jim Parker. Here he is. So Jim Parker talks about, recognize your triggers. My trigger, Phil, when I'm stressed, the first physical sign is I have insomnia. So it shows up with impacts my sleep, right? The second sign is I can get my heart rate. I can feel my heart rate sort of increase, right? And the third symptom is I ruminate. I have the same thought going in my head, and I get absorbed in it. They're three things, and I'll share with you, Phil, what are things that I call stress relievers and anxiety relievers for me. Number one, without a doubt, is exercise. That is the simple one. That physiology of changing your body seems to actually change your mood. The second one is to try and have a person that you actually like, that makes you laugh, that makes you feel good nearby. Talk to them, hang out with them. And the third one is I find I'm not doing it now because of the long COVID and how hard and Bikram yoga was. but doing some sort of mindful meditation, stretching, I find that extremely useful at decreasing. It just takes the edge out of the anxiety. It doesn't get rid of it, but it just takes the sharpness away and takes something to become bearable until things get better. What about yourself? When you're stressed or anxious, can you actually feel any physical things in your body, or is it just your head? You're just your mind.
Not physical. I always sleep well, irrespective of what's happening. No, I've not really ever thought that much about it, Tom, to be honest with you. I reckon if I were to be stressed and you ask people what symptoms I would show, I reckon they would probably just say I was just a bit detached, because I'm probably thinking elsewhere. But I'm the way I'm mechanically wired is that, I'll pick it up pretty quickly, and my immediate default is always to fix it. And how do I fix it? I fix it by gaining control of what concerns me, and I do that through action. And that might actually be, I'll just clean my office up. It'll be something where I just go, there's this problem over here. I don't know how to fix it, but let me win. Let me just win straight away, and I'll clean my office up. And it'll be spick and span, and I'll go, okay, it puts me in the right mechanism to start problem solving. And that's typically how I would do it. I'd probably daydream as well. Daydreaming helps me. Daydreaming is really important. Got a thing from my kids' school the other day, and they were emphasizing just how important boredom is for children. You need your kids to be bored, because when you're bored is when your mind wanders. When your mind wanders, your creativity starts, and you start problem solving. You start thinking critically about things and looking for solutions. So I'm able to probably harness that really quite quickly, and I'll let myself daydream. And daydreaming typically gets me results. It lets me come up with different solutions and, process the best way to go ahead and move on. But fortunately, I'm sort of pretty well equipped, just inherently and organically around that. Whereas a lot of that they're actually learned skills as well. And maybe I have learned it over time. I just didn't know I was learning it through experience and everything else. But Tom, you spoke about humor and comedy as a mechanism for supporting, a happier work life and better interactions. To me, humor is an essential business tool. I use it every single day. When I'm negotiating, and you ask anyone, they'll say, "Oh, Phil does this a lot." I make sure there's a lot of laughter in any negotiation. There's a bit of cheek, there's a bit of innuendo. There's, it's just really reading it. But if you can get people to laugh while you're negotiating, you always get the right outcome. It's when it's the other way around and it's hostile that you always get negative outcomes. So make sure every single person put theatre, is what I call it, put theatre into your negotiations. And if you put theatre into it, everyone enjoys it, mate.
A funny auction is always a far better auction, Phil. It's stressful as it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are stressed. They've spent money on pest and buildings. They don't know whether they're going to own the property. You got a vendor that's agonizing on whether they're going to get 2 million or 1.8 million. It's a lot of money for your average family. Making people laugh and being relaxed, again, just takes the edge out of it. I think it's really, really important, Phil. But the other side of it is, I got to tell you, there's nothing worse, whether it's at a conference or whether with a client, trying to be funny when it's not funny. That actually can backfire. In fact, I've seen it's happened to me. I've used a bit of humor that I thought would actually be good. People haven't laughed. And then what actually happens is, in your own mind, you go backwards. You feel like, wow, it hasn't hit. And now they're probably judging me, thinking that I was trying to be funny, but I'm not naturally funny. And you can easily get sidetracked. So I'll by the way, Phil, I will never use any humor unless it's been tried and tested, because I've worked out what I think is funny might not necessarily be funny to other people, So, and you've got to be, look, political correctness now and humor, you just have to understand that what can be funny for one person can be, devastating for another.
Yeah, and what could be, and again, you're absolutely right, Tom. You've got to be very, very careful. Is what might be a bit of a sledge to one person could be absolutely offensive to another, and you don't know their circumstances. It may, exacerbate other things going on in their lives and be taken completely different. So you need to be very, very conscious about when you do deploy a level of humor in business context. And everyone likes, depending on the culture of an organization and the culture of your peer group, how everyone operates. There's typically subcultures inside of everyone's interactions, and how you're perceived by and engage with one particular group of people is very different to how you're perceived by and engage with another group of people. And you've got to be conscious about it. If you can harness this as a skill, it can be hugely powerful, but it can be hard to get right as well.
Phil, before we finish off, were you surprised on Tuesday, 0.5%? Were you expecting it to be a little bit less, or is that what you're expecting?
I was expecting. I think we spoke about it the last couple of times, Tom. The smart people I know are telling me that the banks have got factored in 50 basis points in September, October, and November, and then they'll apply the brakes over Chrissy. And talk is that you may see it starting to come back towards the latter end of next year. So I think they're still on this go hard, but I think they'll tap the brakes soon, and see what happens. And you need to remember, not as I think a lot of Australians probably didn't do their high school economics. Everyone thinks, why are they pushing up interest rates when things are getting more expensive? Isn't that the opposite of what they should be doing? Interest rates should be coming down so people can still afford to live and spend what they have been spending. Well, the Reserve Bank is trying to get a hold on that and stop people spending. Best way to do that is to hit them where it probably hurts the most, and that is upping interest rates on mortgages, which means they stop spending money elsewhere. And that will help sort of alleviate these inflationary pressures. But there's still some way to go in this cycle, Tom. So for real estate agents, they need to be thinking about this. And I'll throw this out there, Tom, and we spoke about this probably 2 months ago, but it's only now hitting the headlines. And I think we probably need to get someone in to have a chat to this about this. I don't know how aware you are with these changes to land tax in Queensland. It's significant what's happening up there, and it will shape the way in which property investors buy and probably sell real estate in Queensland. So I think we probably need to do a bit of a deep dive on that, get some smart people in and have a yarn about it, because if Queensland agents aren't aware of this, well, if you've heard of it first, go and look it up for investors and mortgage brokers around this as well. There's seismic changes to how land tax is going to be applied in Queensland, and the headline is that it's going to get a lot more expensive to hold property in Queensland, because they're going to be taxing you as a property investor on your whole Australian asset base, not just what you own inside of Queensland.
All right. Well, listen, I wasn't even aware of this. I'm not even across any other detail here. Phil, I want to read up on it, and I'd love to talk to you further about it, because that to me is a major development, particularly in a state where people have actually said it's extremely desirable to be buying property, Brisbane and surrounding areas. So that's not great news if you're someone that loves Queensland as an investment destination. That is not great news. But Phil, as usual, an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. So we're going to be together next week. We're going to be together right through to the end of this year, and hopefully you and I will outlive these rate rises, and that we find out in December that maybe they haven't increased them. But at the moment, Phil, well, it was really interesting, because I actually had a look on Wednesday, and I've got all the media on my mobile phone as subscriptions. And apart from the Fin Review, man, I couldn't actually find information on the rate rise, which basically says to me, man, we don't actually think it's news. We actually think it's old news that you already know. So the Telegraph, I could not find an article on the Wednesday morning as I'm going through the app to see what the views are on interest rates. So
well, Tom, tip for you, mate. You're reading the wrong media. Real Estate Business was out within 2 minutes of the rate announcement, giving context to it, mate.
Well, that's how I found out. I was at the Deck House with McGrath doing our mastery event. We had 2 days with agents that had flown in from Australia and New Zealand. and I got it at around 2:30 from you, you know. And I got to hand it to you. Your IT people are smart. Unfortunately, I've got to keep pressing the click to get into the story, because you do tell us there's been some movement, but unless I press that click, I can't actually find out. So well done to the IT people that understand the importance of getting people engaged on the platforms.
Well, engagement is key, Tom. Great to catch up, mate. Real Estate Exposed on RUOK Day. And remember, if anyone's tuning into this and they feel as though they would benefit from chatting with someone, if they have any sort of concerns or complications with their mental health, there's some very good organisations out there that can help you. Lifeline would be one of them. Beyond Blue would be another one, or just reach out to friends and colleagues. It's the best way to get started with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you've brought that up, Phil, because I feel obligated now to actually give these people that number. Who knows? You never know which person reaching it. So the phone number, Lifeline, which, by the way, I have rung that number many years ago. I can tell you, 2006, I was in a Perth hotel room and I was on my own, and I'd only been diagnosed shortly before, and I was on my own, and I just I was devastated. The number's 131114. That's 131114, and that is an Australian number. That is an Australian number. The number is Lifeline, and you can call them 24/7. And I've got a very good friend of mine, which is called Paul Checker. He is the brother of the ex-Wallabies coach, Michael Checker. And Paul Checker is a trained phone counsellor with Lifeline. So they do a pretty advanced course. And Checker tells me a lot of people ring at odd hours, Lifeline, you know. Picture the quietness, the darkness of the night. Your mind's racing. Everyone else is asleep. So they are the best people. Signing off, Phil.
Thanks, Tom.